Welcome back from the break as we continue on delving into some of the nitty-gritties of the EV transition. I'm Natalie Bucknell, a broadcaster with the Beyond Zero Emission Science and Solutions radio show and podcast, and your MC for this afternoon. Looking forward to another set of fantastic presentations from our three speakers. When we'll hear from them all first, and then we'll proceed on to a Q&A session for about 20 minutes after that. So this session, we're going to hear a bit more about various aspects of converting vehicles to electric propulsion and continue to be inspired by people who've got the vision and leadership to be well ahead of the curve in this transition to electric transport. So how many cars do you think there are in Australia? According to the ABS, in January this year, there were 19.8 million registered vehicles, and only 0.2% of those are electric. So what will happen to all of these once everyone sees the light and goes electric? Our first speaker, Russ Shepherd, comes from a background in IT and project management and is now a director of Evolution and EVUp. Both organisations are working on charging options for domestic and commercial applications and many other things, which Russ will mention. And Evolution also runs the Electric Car Café, which specialises in EV conversions. And that might give us a clue about what he thinks should happen to those 19.8 million ICE vehicles in Australia. So here to talk about ICE vehicle conversion, I give you Russ Shepherd.
Thank you, Natalie. Much appreciated. A great introduction. Much appreciated. Good stuff. So yeah, first of all, here I am, Russ Shepherd. Yeah, we run Evolution down in Melbourne, and yeah, we do a number of things, but I guess our passion is chiefly the electric vehicle conversions. So yeah, look, let's start with why do it, and we get that question asked pretty much daily basis, almost on the hour, I think, every hour, and the answer is, well, there's many, to be quite frank. Typically with classics, it's to recycle, upcycle, and reuse, as it says here, and it's a great option for those that have an electric vehicle which they cherish and may been in the family for a long while, but it may be unreliable. It may not be the daily driver currently, and by converting to electric, you're giving these vehicles a new lease on life, and an option to get some more Ks out of them, and obviously enjoy them more than anything else as well. Not just getting more life out of them as actually enjoying them. So yeah, no, it's a great way to pull these things out of the field, out of the garage, and actually do something more useful with them essentially. So that's one field. Obviously, the classics, which has been, you know, fairly well trodden path so far by the likes of EV West and obviously Graham and Oz DIY as well. But we're also working with specialist and experimental vehicles. So this is a new part of the business that we're getting into at the moment as well. And it's around vehicles that, for example, the OEMs aren't currently manufacturing. There's a lot of sunk effort into vehicles that are very extremely specialist, and which would require significant investment to remanufacture or to buy new or what have you. And if the only thing that's wrong with them is that the drivetrain is tied or there's a government incentive to convert them to electric, then that's the opportunity where we come into this. And obviously, this has been a good example of that is obviously garbage trucks and high rail vehicles and all of these kind of things, whereby they're not currently being manufactured by the OEMs. And to be fair, up until recently, well, actually even now, that there's not really been a pickup truck, for example, or a ute that you can buy, but you extrapolate that out, and there's a whole lot of things that you can't actually buy off the shelf or from the showroom. On the top of that, there's a number of groups we're working with at the moment who are interested to know what can work for them with the new technology. You know, even 5 years ago, you know, there wasn't a consideration for electric vehicles to be used in commercial spaces such as in mines and all this kind of stuff. And you all have heard of the Safescape and Wartana, where they've had great success in converting, Land Cruiser vehicles into electric, and they're used in mines where the vehicles themselves are incredibly robust, and they may have a high capital cost, but the run cost of them over 5 years in such a harsh environment is incredibly attractive. So the opportunities we see at the moment, and where we're going to, is essentially at scale conversions. We've got a number of projects in the workshop at the moment, and for us, there's an opportunity to make a lot of the work the project that we're working on at the moment essentially repeatable and at scale in a number of cases. And so, for example, we've got there's a Hilux there, as you see on the screen. That gives you a clue in terms of what we're working on at the moment as one of our projects at the moment. Essentially, brand new Hilux being converted to electric, because there isn't actually electric Hilux at the moment on the market. So these kind of conversions where the EV tech means that it can be far more efficient, far more reliable, when obviously that mode of transport isn't currently available, is incredibly attractive for commercials and private buyers alike. And look, again, we're aiming to make this repeatable. We don't want to be doing. There's a heap of IP, as Graham will know, in converting a single vehicle as a one-off to electric. We don't want to be doing that, every week, every month, or what have you. We want to be able to have stick with a number of vehicles that we can convert, that is marketable, that is of interest and hopefully cool at the same time. And it means that essentially with these vehicles, the cost should come down and should be much more cost comparable to, say, an ICE vehicle much sooner than we think that the OEM manufacturers can do it, essentially. So this is a thorny subject. So, like I said earlier, the majority of the cost of the first vehicle is in the R&D, and it's a real challenge. And again, Graham and all the conversion shops across the country and the world will attest to this. The cost really depends on how far and how fast and all this kind of stuff. And we typically get the first phone call with a customer will be, I want 500 kilometers, I want 0 to 100 in less than 3 seconds, all of that kind of stuff. And we ask, well, how far do you travel on a daily basis? So, well, just 20 Ks because we work in Bunnings, and so we have to talk people down to what they actually need in terms, for them to be more realistic. But essentially, the cost is, as it says, that it's from around, well, it's not $15, it's $15,000, if you put a K in there as well. But it's from 15,000 to about 150. But what we do here is, it's not just about converting to electric. We're making these vehicles much more usable and easy to live with on a daily basis. So there's when we're creating the build spec for these vehicles, they have a comfort and a safety comfort and safety components. So there's things like certainly on a number of vehicles, we're now installing side impact protection bars as default, and we're also for example, including proximity locking and all this kind of stuff as well. All the modern versions that you would expect from a vehicle that you buy from off the forecourt, essentially. And look, as it says there, in terms of range, the sweet spot is around 250 kilometers. We find for most people, that's fine for getting around the city. Maybe it's going further out. Obviously with a decent charging capability in there as well. And yeah, it does depend on space. There's obviously a Fiat conversion that electric classic cars did a few months ago, and it's incredibly constrained in terms of how far it can drive. But right up to the Transit is, and you see there, that'll be a 300 kilometre vehicle by the time we finish, because there's heaps of space underneath. It's got a heap of batteries, you know, and it'll be an awesome thing to drive around in. And then just a few pictures. Obviously, that's in my background as well. That's our Range Rover Classic 2-door. I think the beautiful thing about these vehicles is that they all have a story. We encourage people to convert the Classics rather than Hyundai Excels or anything like that, because they all have a story, and they're far more interesting than a vehicle that you can buy new. This particular vehicle, we pulled it out of a field. It had been flooded. Essentially, you could see the water line into the gearbox. It had had first and second gears both engaged at the same time, and someone had driven into the back of it as well. So it was a real mess. It really was. But we've obviously partially restored it. We haven't done anything to the bodywork, so it looks just. I mean, it's got fancy photo effects there, but it's actually pretty rough from a body perspective. But that tells the story of the vehicle. And we've been stopped multiple times driving it around because, you know, it looks like it doesn't belong on the road, but underneath it's absolutely schmick. It's got all the latest suspension from Petters, you know, the best tires that we can buy, and all this kind of stuff. And it's got a, you know, really tidy interior as well. So it retains the story of the vehicle, but it means that we can actually drive it regularly and reliably. And it still costs far less than a luxury SUV, shall we call it. I guess part of what we do as well, we didn't want to do this, if I'm perfectly honest, wasn't part of the plan, but we now have to do, obviously, some element of restoration. And this is the Holden EJ wagon we're currently working on, and that's our fabricator who's obviously replacing the floor in it there. This will have a Tesla packs and Hyper 9 systems, Hyper 9 drive systems. So it'll be, I think, triple the torque, triple the power. But part of what we're doing here, obviously, you can't just put that amount of power into a 1963 EJ. That's not going to work out too well. So we're having, you know, full front end replacement, ABS disc brakes, full independent suspension, all of that kind of stuff. So, and again, you know, proximity locking and you know, side impact intrusion bars. So it should drive as well as a modern vehicle, but have all the charm of a you know, a 1963 EJ. So yeah, that blend is really key for us. Yeah, look, this is my own personal vehicle. Very happy with it. It's coming really well. This was an ex-postie van from 1969. Yeah, that is actually the original color. We've actually done some body work on that, so that's actually back to scratch as it was, back to original. So yeah, it's a lovely vehicle. It's a real charm to drive. And I think that's all I've got, guys. I'm actually 50 seconds short. What I'll do now, I hope that makes some sense. Is that informative enough? I don't feel like I've covered everything off, but was that okay, Natalie?
That's been fantastic, Russ, and I'm sure it sparked lots of questions from our listeners today.
I hope so. I didn't want to drag on too long, but yeah, it's I'm happy to answer whatever comes through, obviously.
Yeah, and after Graham and Rebecca have spoken, then we'll be able to have the chance to quiz Russ. But just from the passion that you share in that presentation, Russ, I think any people who are car enthusiasts who are concerned that the advance of electric technology will result in the loss of character in cars would be very much reassured.